smartphones. It's become an everyday essential: food, water, air, and you got to have your phone. You spend 195 minutes a day on your phone. That's over 3 hours on your phone. Texting, you're shopping, you're talking on it, you're doing everything with that phone. But does this modern necessity put you at risk for brain cancer? Recent headlines and new information from Consumer Reports got me questioning what we should all know about smartphones. Do cell phones cause brain cancer? The debate is heating up. Recently, 190 scientists from 39 countries issued a health crisis warning, calling on governments worldwide to lower human exposure to radiation from cell phones. In March, a German study found that cell phone signals can cause tumors in mice. But other studies, like one in Denmark, found no cancer risk. The US government says that cell phones are essentially safe. But in Berkeley, California, a new law requires stores to put a warning on cell phone packaging that states, if you carry or use your phone in a pants or shirt pocket or tucked into a bra when the phone is on and connected to a wireless network, you may exceed the federal guidelines for exposure to RF radiation. And usually hidden deep within the settings, most cell phones have warnings advising you to keep the phone away from your body when carrying or using it. As the scientists seesaw and the politicians ping pong, consumers are left wondering, just how safe is my cell phone? And according to a Dr. Oz poll, 70% of you are concerned about cell phone radiation.
When I hear all the conflicting studies, I tend to wonder, are we really being told the truth?
I've heard that it can get to your brain eventually.
We live in a society where everything can give you radiation.
I think my phone is safe. I use it all the time. But if it turns out I'm wrong, I'm going to be furious.
So first, let's start with what smartphone radiation actually is and how it may affect your body. So when you make a phone call, your phone sends a signal out. It actually receives a signal as well. These radio frequency waves go from its antenna to the cell phone towers and back again. Radiation waves, right, they're not as strong as radios and microwaves that are also sending out messages. And these kinds of waves are also different from X-rays and nuclear waves. In fact, the waves from a smartphone can't break up your DNA. They can only heat up water. That's important because water is what the human body is made out of. All of our human tissues and cells have water, and that's actually what's concerning a lot of doctors. So here's the question. How much of these waves are you getting from your phone? I sent Dr. Butch Rosser, one of my core team experts, to investigate.
Before every cell phone is sold, it has to be tested and meet stringent government standards for radiation exposure. One of the few labs that does the testing, RF Exposure, is based in San Diego. I was offered a rare opportunity to go behind closed doors to see just how it's done.
Hi, I'm Dr. Butch Rosser.
The lab is run by Jay Moulton.
What we have here is we got a robotic arm that we use that moves around this probe, and the probe is what actually does all the measurements.
Okay.
And the probe will come around and go into a tub that is...
Oh, this is a tub?
This is a tub, and it's in the form of the human head, and that way you can do the left and the right side.
And then it measures the RF exposure or radiation exposure with this precise robotic arm of yours,
Correct.
Right? I gotta get involved. I'm getting out of this coat. You gotta let me just work with you today. I'm your lab assistant today, okay? Now, what we want you to do is to test two of the more popular phones. We're gonna go full contact to the ear. We're gonna move it away about 1 inch. And then we're gonna have it in the speaker or earpiece position like this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To do the test, we will attach the phones to this model of the human head at the spot where the ear would be located. This model is the standard size mandated by the government for testing cell phones. But as it turns out, only 3% of the population actually has a head this size.
That head is closer to my size head, or maybe a little bit bigger. What about women and children? Is this test going to be applicable to the safety of women and children?
It hasn't been proven one way or another yet, but they are, there has been talk and they've been looking at it.
To start the testing, we fill the mold with a substance designed to simulate human tissue.
So it represents the electrical properties of the human head so that we see how much of that energy will penetrate in through that tissue.
Next, the mechanical probe is inserted into the fluid. Finally, Jay simulates making a phone call with the phone placed against the head, while the mechanical probe moves through the mixture to measure the radiation emitted by the phone. The radiation levels show up on a computer monitor.
Well, the yellow shows where the hottest point is on the phone.
Hottest here means the highest level of radiation being transmitted to the head.
I can't wait to see if there's a difference as you move the phone away from your head.
What our test confirmed, there is a difference, a big one.
If you look at the numbers there, the 1 inch, you're dropping 70 to 80%, and then when you get further out, even at the 3 inch, it drops even further than that.
Translated, that means if your phone is against your head, you're exposed to your phone's maximum amount of radiation, 100%. But moving your phone just 1 inch away from your head, you're exposed to only 15%. 3 inches away and you're exposed to just 5%, almost no radiation. In the end, the phones we tested both came in under federal guidelines.
They're both well below the FCC limit, but there's a lot of other variables that goes into how much radiation you're going to have.
So, keeping it just barely off your ear seems to make a difference. Dr. Ross is joining us. So what are other variables besides distance from your head that make a difference with this radiation?
Well, first of all, your reception, okay? If you have fewer bars and you got poor reception, that means your phone is actually working harder and there's more radiation exposure.
Even the service you have might make a difference between you and the person next to you.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a very, very brief rough summary of the papers I looked at for this show, just the show. Look how much stuff there is. What is the problem? Why so many mixed messages? How can it be so difficult to figure out if a smartphone's radiation is a problem or not?
Well, these tumors are very slow growing. That's number one. So it may take years and years to find out the true answer from that aspect. The other thing is the technology. It's always changing.
Yeah, in fact, part of the reason it's so hard, the fact that these technologies change, is not just it's a little bit, it's a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So come on over here. I'm going to show you something. I got a little, this is my phone actually.
Oh, the other one looks familiar too.
All right, yeah.
You remember this?
We call it the hernia maker because it was so heavy.
All right.
So let's go back to this issue of the antenna. You touched on it very briefly. This antenna was huge, but where's the antenna on our regular smartphones?
Well, in fact, the antenna in this position was not a good thing, and it took us a while to know that. And in your new phones, you actually have it down here low, away from the critical anatomical areas. And that is probably one of the biggest advances that we've had, really.
So some countries have banned advertising of smartphones to kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I love you just explain how radiation affects kids' brains differently as you started to in that little piece.
Well, the big thing is that their heads are not only smaller in size, but the bone is thinner, and the depth of penetration in a small head goes a lot farther. The adult head is not nearly as much.
So all adults are thick-headed is what you're saying? You
said
it.
Relatively saying, and mine's thicker than most, right?
So we reached out to the cell phone industry about the radiation. Here's what they said. The FCC has determined that all wireless phones legally sold in the United States are safe. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos to live the good life.